I recently did a free web class called Fast Track to Astrology Reading Success, and I want to give you an introduction to that right now. As I said, the reason I'm doing this is because I'm opening up my certification course again, and I'm going to be giving an overview of the course here, as well as an overview of chart reading, and really just a kind of streamlined way to approach reading astrology charts. And I'm going to bring up a handout that I have. In fact, I'll put it here in the chat box that you all can see. That will be it's actually excerpts from my book on yoga and Vedic astrology. Some excerpts from that. I usually have it behind me here. Here's the book, Yoga and Vedic Astrology. If you don't know, I wrote this book. And I also wrote this book called The Ascendant, 108 Planets of Vedic Astrology. And so, turn that a little bit. So it's a way for you to, know how to organize the information in the chart so that you can approach reading charts and not be overwhelmed by all the details, because there are a lot of details that again can be overwhelming at first if you don't know how to organize it. That's the biggest issue that students have. The biggest issue is where to start, how to prioritize all the information, how to sequence it in the right order. This is one of the biggest things that I stress in my certification courses is this issue of what's called priority and sequence, because people know how to people have gathered a lot of information, but it's not organized correctly. It's not prioritized correctly either. So again, what I tell people often is that you have gathered plenty of information, right? But the thing is that you haven't organized it properly. And so this is a problem of what I call prioritize and sequence. Things aren't, the information is just all over the place. It's not prioritized. Everything is not as important as everything else, and it's not being done in the right order. And so, this is a big part of what I'm going to be, sharing today. You should see my screen now, and this is actually from my certification course page, and you can see one thing says priority and sequence, one says principle stacking. This is another very important way to streamline, chart reading. And this page right here is from a group of free classes that I give for people that are interested also in being taken through what I'm about to show you methodically today. This is actually a screenshot from the back end of my certification course. This is all the classes and whatnot. Each one of these modules are different groups of classes, 6 classes here. Then you have module 3, 6 more classes. So this is all the back end of my certification course. But today I'm also going to be going over this chart reading intensive, which is what I'm showing you here now. And let me see. Whoops, one second. Yeah, and so this is what we're going to be looking at today in this overview. And you can see at the bottom, what I have here is just an overview of how to really understand astrology on a sort of karmic level, and how that karma is related to other like yogic structures such as the chakras and meditation and karma. I'm talking about Sri Yukteswar. Again, these are excerpts from my book on yoga and Vedic astrology, how these important Vedic principles Indian principles like elements and gunas and chakras are all expressed with the South Indian, through the South Indian chart. Actually, it's shown very clearly in the South Indian chart because all of the signs and the chakras are lined up. But then also, this is another structure of how the houses work. But then I also have a simple chart reading formula that shows you the sort of priority and sequence and how to march through that. This is, again, from my book. And I have a worksheet that allows you, that can really show you how to move through, approaching any chart that you're reading. As you can see, it goes through things in a certain priority. And then I have a case study here. So again, you can download this from the link that I posted in the chat box and see how this works. You can then use that chart reading template. I then do it here. The Lagna shown by the sign of Cancer. So I then take this template and I apply it to the chart of Angelina Jolie. Then I apply it to the chart of John McEnroe. And you can see, even by just a basic, even just a basic sort of, structure here, you can get a real, a great overview of how to prioritize and sequence readings. So then again, once you then have a structure like this, then it becomes just crucial to be able to plug in the right, adjectives and structures into these, into a template like this. And of course, that's the skill, and that's why someone would then study and learn all of those, not just basics, but how to interpret things. And again, in this handout that I gave you, you also have, you can click right from the document and go right to this page where you can also register for a webinar that I have that will basically take you right through the certification course, so you can actually see what's in it and how the information is organized. When you click here, you can select a date and time for the webinar. You could actually watch it instantly as soon as you go there, or you can find a time over the next few days that should be pretty convenient for you. Either way, you can do that. So just to give you an overview of what I'm doing here today, let me go back here. So again, just to go over this, and I'll take some questions later, but I'm not going to be answering questions about people's charts and whatnot. So if you're here to, talk about your personal chart and have me say something, again, it's better to just go. I never said that's what I was going to do. I'm here to show people how to read astrology charts, how to practice, and not, do anything like that. So, so again, I'll just put this here again. I'll post this link again in case someone, let me see here. In case someone just showed up, here's the chart reading template. And, at some point when I start taking questions, you should have a button somewhere on your interface where you can raise your hand, or you can do something like that, or you can type in the chat box that you have a question. You can just type that you have a question, and then I'll unmute you and you could ask the question. We'll do that a little later, but right now I want to just go over this handout that I have. I even see some people that are in the certification course are on the class or on the call, so that's good too. So I'm just going to kind of go through this so that you understand how to use this chart reading template, and really how to understand what's going on with astrology and what you're doing with the chart and karma. So it says here, and again, this is an excerpt from my book, Yoga and Vedic Astrology. It's copied from it. It says, through planet signs and houses and nakshatras, our life unfolds. Life is akin to being in school. Just like when you're attending university, each year you begin with a new grade, with a clean slate, after having passed the previous level. So similarly, you incarnate in each lifetime to start like a new school grade hopefully go to the next level. So it's just kind of a model. And remember, Lord Krishna told Arjuna, just as a man casts off worn out clothes and puts on new ones, so also the embodied self casts off worn out bodies and enters others which are new. So the same idea applies here. So again, this is in my book, Yoga and Vedic Astrology, I actually have a whole section where I talk about the Bhagavad Gita. I talk about the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali as well. And so I'm just referring back to that model where Lord Krishna himself says it's like each year or each lifetime is akin to putting on new clothes, just like sort of like a school year. Each year you go back, you hopefully pass the previous, now you're here to learn new things. You incarnate, and the chart is showing what those big lessons are. And in this model, you know, the planets are the teachers. They have the wisdom that we're trying to learn, and the planets are related to the sattvic guna. Planets are related to the sattvic guna. Houses are related to the rajasic guna, or which has to do with feelings and emotions. And houses are related to the tamasic guna, which are the structures and the forms that show up in our life. So planets are related. Sattva is just one of the gunas. If you don't know about gunas, they're really the principles of body, mind, and spirit. And sattva has to do with spirit and wisdom and intelligence, love, harmony, joy. Those are related to the planets, the pure sattvic energies of intelligence and wisdom. How the planets feel to us has to do with the astrology signs. Each one of the planets rule different signs, and the signs are like the emotional, psychological environment, how the planets feel to us. Most of the planets rule a masculine and a feminine sign. Masculine, feminine are really kind of energies, internal, external, reflective, assertive. And then they have different elements that they're related to. These elements and gunas and are, you know, very much akin to the evolutionary process that we're on. And so again, planets are the sattva, rajas are the signs. And then once you have an ascendant, once you have like a rising sign, for example, then each one of these signs become houses. The lagna is the intersecting point. So once you have a rising sign, then this sign of Leo becomes the second house, if it's a Cancer, like it is here. The sign of Libra becomes the fourth house, right? Because then the rising sign, or the birth time, then creates houses, and then you start to read the karmas of the individual, because now those signs that were just the psychological environment become houses, and they become forms and structures. So then, you know, like this is Angelina Jolie's chart, then this Venus in Cancer is not just Venus in Cancer, it's in her first house, which shows your appearance, your face, other kinds of things. So that Venus in her first house, that Venus in Cancer, when she was born, is in her first house. If she would have been born an hour later, 2 hours later, it would have been in the 12th house, which is very different. Then Leo is the rising sign, and that Venus is not in the first house. And again, this is related to tamas. Tamas just means forms. It's just the forms and the structures of things. And sometimes the forms they bring greater attachment, which can bring darkness. And then we experience tamas as like a yoga concept. So many people understand the gunas through these concepts that are more related to yoga and what's called Sankhya philosophy. But it's really better to know the gunas in an astrological cosmic way as evolutionary principles, not as things that we judge. Well, sattva, that's the good one. Rajas and tamas are kind of the bad ones. No, they're all good for what they are showing us. So now, again, you know, this is, you know, because we don't understand the law of karma, when we hear predeterminism in astrology, we may say something like, but there's still free will. I can still overcome my karma and the harmful effects of the planets, right? So again, this is from my book, and I put here, because I said, as I explained previously, predeterminism and free will are part of the same process. So here I'm discussing karma and how karma unfolds and how these lessons are learned, you know, throughout, you know, through the, you know, in the university that we've incarnated in. So yes, the events in your life are going to unfold when they're supposed to unfold. The lessons, you know, the lesson plans have been predetermined in advance by your past actions. So you can relax and trust that the universe loves and cares about you and nothing wrong is happening to you. However, you're here to take the tests, then pass or fail, just like in school. So you can call that free will if you want. Though, again, this is the thing. Just because you know the tests are planned doesn't mean you've passed the tests. That's why you're in school, to take the tests and then pass or fail. So again, I use this example because I think it's one of the really good examples of astrology. So many people set up this false choice, especially as it relates to karma. They think, well, I still have free will, right? I can still change, right? Changing doesn't mean you're changing your karma. If you know what karma means, you know that karma means the energy that you've put in motion and the situations and circumstances that are going to happen. But that just shows that you're in school and you're going to take a test. Think of it this way. You know that when you start, well, maybe you don't know, but the teacher knows. They've already planned this out. The teacher already knows when these tests are coming. They're already planned. Maybe you don't know it, but they know it. They have it all mapped out already. Just like the birth chart is like your life, right? Think of it this way, this metaphor. At the beginning of each school year, maybe you don't know what's going to happen, but the teachers do. They have the year planned out, and they've been doing this for a long time. Now, again, what's different in a school is they're teaching the same lessons to everybody. It's a very gross kind of, learning process. They have a textbook and a manual, and everyone in the 9th grade learns this class this way at this time, and they're teaching everybody the same lessons at the same time. Your free will, quote, is to show up and pass or fail the test based on your effort and energy and comprehension and understanding. That's really the free will part of it. But the tests are going to come if you know how to read the chart. And the free will part is whether or not you're going to keep making the same mistakes or evolve and develop. Plus, unlike a school or university, the lessons are much more subtle. It's not the same class being taught to everybody. It kind of is. It's the same themes. Jupiter is always teaching where we find our inspiration, and the sun is always teaching where we find our power and confidence, and Mercury is always teaching how do we think with clarity and discrimination and communicate that, and blah, blah, in a general sense. But the specific lessons and the specific tests are very subtle because these are gods, after all. They're not human teachers teaching mundane subjects. They are the energetic factors of the universe and the cosmos. So they're teaching the highest lessons possible. That's what the planets are. They're the great teachers. And they teach all of the subtle lessons based on our preconceived ideas about how we think things are. So we've complicated things and twisted their energy up into all kinds of tangles and knots, and we're not clear about any of it usually. So what astrology does is really allow us this kind of ability to zoom out and see things from a higher altitude and then be able to unravel all of these different factors and then understand it ourselves. And then if we get good at it, eventually be able to explain it to others and look at their chart and understand what their karmic lessons are and what their tendencies are. Because again, what you want to understand is that it's not even people get really bogged down in all of the specific predictions, and we're so gobsmacked with our own personal little story, and that's really the least important or powerful part of it, actually, because most of our karma is around all of these shared principles. Those are the things that we need to really understand, and one of the best things that astrology can teach us. In fact, it's one of the main reasons to study. Most people study astrology. Most people that study with me study because they actually want to know these higher principles first. They want to understand, because that's where I come at it from. I also do very, very, very specific predictions. It works on that very specific predictive level as well. But the most important reason to study it and to learn it, and the reason they studied it, was because it connects you to the cosmic intelligence and wisdom that's making everything happen. Within that is what are called your samskaras and your karma. And this is why I'm talking about all this right now, because yoga and Ayurveda and Jyotish, they all approach this, what karma is, from a universal standpoint, what are called samskaras. in yoga, is what the chart is showing. A chart that, the birth chart is basically a portrait of someone's samskaras. You're reading their mental and emotional and psychological tendencies, like with John McEnroe. When I look at this, I know his karmic pattern. Again, karma goes into the mind and arrives as a tendency and as what's called a samskara, a deep mental groove and habit and predisposition and way of seeing the world. And it arrives in the mind in the moon. This is why especially the Vimshotri Dasha and the other nakshatra lunar-based dasha schemes are really the ones, especially Vimshotri.